What is up, everybody, and welcome to the NFL Pre-Lock Show for Monday Night Football. We're here to break you down all the way up until, roughly an hour before kickoff. It's myself, HeadChopper, walking you through this with the help of SquirrelPatrol, John Breslin. He's here to give you his secrets, trademark industry secrets of how he wins so much money. And he's helped us before, believe it or not. He's pulled some rabbits out of his hat on this before. But yeah, smash that like button. If you're here watching this thing in YouTube, go ahead and smash that like button, get it going, and fire up the questions in chat. This is not a showdown. I said showdown pre-log. That's just the name of the show. It's actually, again, for some strange reason, we're getting a two-gamer here, like we've had a couple times this year. But this is middle of the season stuff. We're used to this stuff like the first weekend, but now it's middle of the season. But John, how you doing, man? How did Sunday treat you?
It wasn't great. It was just weird going into like that afternoon slate, and everyone just got decimated. I guess it turned out fine. But I thought like, I've got some really good Jaden Daniels teams, coming up, and then I even had like an Aiden O'Connell team that got like destroyed. That all had like pretty good running back and wide receiver combinations. Like it was big on Bijan Robinson. He did well, but there were a lot of running backs that had 2 touchdowns. So, I think I had like a Bijan Joe Mixon team that had Jane Daniels that I was all excited about watching through to the end, and then got destroyed. So, but yeah, onto Monday Night Football. We got a classic slate. I think this is the third of 4 Monday night doubleheaders that the NFL is doing this year. I was actually looking this up earlier today, something to do with the new media contract. But another classic slate. So we'll get to it.
Yeah, it's weird if you were even remotely kind of relying on or looking at the projections yesterday. You probably didn't do so well because Jaden was going to be a popular core. Some things had Daniel Jones being pretty popular, and who else? Oh, Juju Smith-Schuster. Jordan Whittington was a salary saver that didn't even see the field, man. Like, was active but didn't even see the field, and he was propped up in a lot of really good projection sets that had him. So it was a really, really odd day. And we'll see how we get bounced back here tonight. 2-gamer. Does this, of course, it's a different format because it's a full roster, but how much is this changing your strategy as opposed to just a regular showdown here?
I like these slates, as you know. I like these, 2-game Monday nighters. I think there's a mix of strategy that you have to use. And like you want to find, some lower owned players, but like you also have to be like you're constrained by this like format. Like, you got to take 2 running backs. You have to take a tight end. Showdown, you can mix and match. You don't, necessarily have to be locked into a certain number of running backs or a certain number of tight ends or anything like that. And so I do think that like the guys they're seeing really low ownership at running back, and the guys that see generally lower ownership at tight end kind of should be higher owned than they are, because there's like, especially like tight end, there's always that possibility that all the tight ends just blank, right? Or like, not necessarily blank, but like they don't come close to paying off their price tag. And then, then you want to be spending as little money at the position as you possibly can. And so we see some really interesting lineups win these like 2-game classic slates. And I think most people still kind of build as if it's like a main, 10, 12 game main slate.
Yeah, it's going to be interesting. We've done plenty of shows by now together. I kind of know where your head's at. When we do MLB, you're like, a short slate. I want to stack more than I even do on a regular slate. Like it's counterintuitive to me almost, and that's why we're different. And that's good. But you want to stack more. So now you got a 2-gamer. Are you more inclined to stack the heck out of one of these games or one of these teams?
I usually am, yeah. And I usually like to stack more than I would on a classic slate, even, which it's a little bit counterintuitive. But if you think it depends whether it's like a running quarterback or whether it's a just a passing oriented quarterback, so like a Lamar Jackson versus a Baker Mayfield. But I just think that you also have the possibility that one of these games just goes haywire. And we saw it last night, or we saw it yesterday, right? Like Jaden Daniels goes down. Aiden O'Connell goes down. Like these games can go completely haywire, and then you just have Washington running the ball, right? And so, or you have like Marcus Mariota stepping in. I'm not advocating playing a backup quarterback. Some people would, but I'm not going that far. But I do think that you generally want to be kind of overstacking. Like, if you've got like Baker Mayfield in that lineup, and you've got like you're gonna have a good Tampa Bay receiver kind of at every price point. So you maybe want to lean more towards that Tampa Bay receiver than somebody from the other teams.
Yeah, it's an interesting bit of strategy that goes into every different slate. Every slate's so different. So a couple questions here real fast. Mardon, are we expecting an update on SimLabs? Yes, I could almost guarantee it when they get the full list of inactives that come in. They hit an update. It takes them a few minutes after that. So almost every time, like clockwork, after the inactives come in, we'll get one last update for SimLabs, and that's the one you're going to roll with. I'm not gonna build anything with this timestamp from yesterday. Just wait till we get some inactives, and then we'll be good to go. Are there any injuries we're waiting on? We're waiting on the inactive list, Mr. Gerg. From what we know, there's nothing that's going to change us too much. There's no like questionable tags that should make us go haywire here or anything. Not like we've had in the past, but you never know what's going to pop up on that list. So we'll keep an eye on that. And of course, we got our Carolina guy, FanDuel guy. He wants to know, do you have any specific large field GPP strategy for FanDuel on this little two-gamer?
There's not anything that really sticks out to me as being FanDuel specific on this one. Sometimes there is. I think it's about the same slate on both FanDuel and DraftKings, just with the knowledge that the touchdowns are a little bit more important on FanDuel. So I would say like that's going to make Lamar Jackson a much better play. That's going to make Derrick Henry a much better play, and they're still good. Like those are two obviously really good plays, but they're also really priced up on FanDuel as well. Like the FanDuel pricing is kind of adjusted to be appropriate for like Derrick Henry and for Lamar Jackson. So there's nothing that really jumps out at me as like you need to do this on FanDuel or that on FanDuel.
Yeah. So while we wait here a few more minutes and see if we can get our update in, I don't want to build too early, but again, the news shouldn't change that much. But let's just talk in generalities here. Baltimore at Tampa, about a 50 points total. That's a pretty big total. It's a tightish spread. You have any lean on this game or anything specific from this game you think game script wise how it's going to go?
Well, yeah, the thing that jumps out to me is just that the two defenses are first and fourth in passing yards allowed. So Ravens give up the most passing yards per game. Tampa Bay gives up the fourth most passing yards per game. And we have two good quarterbacks. I mean, we have four pretty good quarterbacks here on this Monday night slate. I think last Monday night doubleheader, we had Tyler Huntley, Will Levis, and as much other. So this is one, a little bit more scoring potentially, as long as the games don't go haywire. I think this will be the higher scoring of the two games. And I don't even like mind the over on this one, even though I think it's about 50 and a half, because we could see some points here. And it's probably the game that I'm going to be targeting with my DFS lineups more than the second game, but not by like it's not going to be like an all-in thing on this first game or anything like that. I think it's going to be maybe more like a 2/3 split or 60-40 kind of thing. But I'll be leaning more towards this game.
Well, you mentioned kind of how you feel like it might go. Defenses giving up a lot, passing, all this and that. Is this a game where you're looking to like maybe be well under the field on Derrick Henry, who has been an absolute machine so far?
It is possible, that I'll end up under the field on Derrick Henry, and we'll talk about it a little bit with the Chargers game. But yeah, I mean these teams are just so accommodating kind of to the pass. But like Baltimore gives up the fewest rushing yards per game. Tampa Bay this year is maybe a little bit middle of the pack. I think maybe 12th or 14th or something in terms of rushing yards per game allowed. But historically, they've been much better. I think Vita Vea was a little bit dinged up. So that could have explained, I think he missed a game. And then they gave up a ton of rushing yards. So historically, these aren't teams you want to be running on. And so, yeah, I'm a little bit down on Derrick Henry. He's really expensive. And I think there's better running backs that project a little bit better.
Then talk to me about the second game. We got the Chargers in Arizona. The Chargers have had a blueprint this year of how they want to play, and it's not high flying, that's for sure. And then Arizona, boy, just to kind of for a team that has a bad defense and should always be in these shootout type games, and really, I think he's a really good quarterback, Kyler Murray. They seem to underperform all the time in DFS slash fantasy. What's your like lean on that game?
Yeah, this is an interesting one. The Chargers have allowed the fewest points per game in the NFL this year, and the fifth fewest yards per game. I think that, rushing defense is a little bit stronger maybe than the passing defense, but still, like I wouldn't have predicted that coming into the season. Um, Having said that, it's interesting. This is a little bit of a like different environment for the Chargers. Like they're going into Arizona. It's an indoor environment, and the Arizona defense is not as good. So like I think Justin Herbert will be the least owned of the four quarterbacks, but we're seeing with SimLabs here a little bit of positive leverage on Herbert. So yeah, I think the game could go in a few different directions. That's why I'm definitely going to have some stacks of this game. Is like maybe this is the game the Chargers decide to air it out a little bit more. That wouldn't be like shocking. Having said that, the weakness of the Arizona defense has still been the rush defense. I think the third most rushing yards allowed per game. So most likely it's just gonna be a J.K. Dobbins game. And I know we have like J.K. Dobbins projected raw points ahead of Derrick Henry, and I actually kind of agree with that. I think he's in a better spot here than Derrick Henry. But I'll also have some like Justin Herbert teams as well. I may end up over the field on Justin Herbert.
Interesting. Let me give SimLabs a quick refresh here and see if not still from yesterday, but you know what? We'll get into some things because it's a process. You got to start building out. We got about 22 minutes or so until we're out of here, and we will have our Plums play of the night on the two gamer here in a little bit. But let's talk about SimLabs, and you know what? That's also why we're here, man. I'm on SimLabs. Let me get you the RG Combo Light package here. Talk about that real quick. It's Combo Light for RG. It's the newest product they got. It's the power. We're on SimLabs. We're going to talk about it. This is what you get. You get a shot at SimLabs. Combo Light, $39.99 a month. SimLabs comes with it for all these sports that we do right now. MLB, which just passed, or World Series. You can mess around with the World Series. NFL, it's good. NBA, I'm very intrigued to use it this year in NBA. Although if your timing has to be right and you have to watch out for those late scratches and stuff. But NBA is going to be fun, and they got it for PGA. I should do more PGA. That sounds fun. But that's the RG Lite combo package, $39.99, cost effective. Get you SimLabs, which is what we're going to look at right now. Two gamer, John. Okay, so it's not a main slate and it's not a showdown. Let's talk about some settings here. Correlation. Kind of you've hinted at how much you love to stack games here or stack teams on these smaller. Should we up the correlation weight significantly here, which theoretically should get us a lot more of those types of lineups?
Yeah, I would up the correlation a little bit. I want to be, kind of operating under the theory that, one of these games could go, berserk, and the other one could be a little bit of a dud. We've seen that before on these two gamers. This was Cincinnati, Washington, and then Buffalo and Jacksonville. And Buffalo went crazy and was pulling their guys, shortly after halftime. So they were up so big on Jacksonville. Then Washington and Cincinnati just went back and forth. I think that was the game where nobody punted. I'd up the correlation weight, and I would try upping the ownership weight as well. Because if I'm playing like the larger field contests, like I always like the idea of getting, trying to get at least one pretty low owned player into each lineup for this kind of thing. If I'm playing that like 100,000 person contest, or 50,000 people I'm trying to beat, I want somebody's got to like kind of vault me to the top of the field. It doesn't necessarily have to be like somebody completely off the radar, because like Justin Herbert might not see a ton of ownership. So if I'm playing like Justin Herbert, I don't know that I necessarily need, I don't need to go to like the fifth string Baltimore wide receiver. I don't need to Tylan Wallace. I don't know. But so you can play football players that are recognizable names, just if they have lower ownership. So I would up the ownership weight and up the correlation.
And I know you like a little upside in your build, so let's get some upside in there. Projection weight, that's just one of those things. And then in settings, we're going to play large field tonight. Results range, let's stick it at around medium. This is kind of the variety of how your lamps are going to pop out. If you're doing like a 20 max, 20 lineups, I might keep the result range pretty low and tight and have some similar lineups. But if I'm plugging in 100 lineups here to mess around with, I probably want a variety of lineups. So we're going to hit that in just a minute. Real quick, got a question in chat for you. Just a 2v2. Jackson and Connor or Baker Mayfield and Derrick Henry?
I'd actually do the Baker Mayfield and Derrick Henry.
Really?
I think that's a really interesting pairing because if Baker is going to be the winning quarterback, like he's got to beat out Lamar Jackson. Well, how does Baker Mayfield beat out Lamar Jackson? Well, if Lamar doesn't get any rushing touchdowns, well, so who's getting the rushing touchdowns then? Or presumably it's probably Derrick Henry. So actually, and I'm not like setting strict rules when I build lineups, like no Derrick Henry if you get Lamar Jackson, because they're Lamar Jackson and Derrick Henry are probably gonna like rise together to some extent. But I don't know. If I'm playing like Derrick Henry in a lineup, I probably prefer Baker Mayfield to Lamar Jackson.
What if I switched it on you and said Baker plus Derrick Henry, and on the flip side was Lamar Jackson plus, let's say, Bucky Irving, and then I could take that extra money and upgrade somewhere. It'd be the same concept,
I think I like the Baker Mayfield still and Derrick Henry more because the Ravens give up the fewest rushing yards per game in the NFL. Like I don't know if it's like Bucky Irving is going to go crazy. Could be like a 3-headed monster backfield there with like Sean Tucker. I still probably like the Baker Mayfield. Baker has actually had more games of like 30 DK points or 29 DK points and above this season than Lamar Jackson, which surprised me.
Yeah, so the inactives came out here a little bit. There's absolutely nothing on those inactives that should move the needle on any of this stuff. So we're good there. Derek is asking, what's your favorite salary saver on DK before we hit this build right here? What's your favorite salary saver on DK?
I think my favorite salary saver, like by the definition of like guy below the average price on both sites, is Ladd McConkey. But I think he's going to be very popular. So if by salary saver you mean a guy with like much lower ownership, a couple of the guys I'm looking at are Kamari Vidal and Sterling Shepard. I think both have
back to Sterling. We went Sterling that one showdown, and that didn't work out well, but you never know. And then real quick, King Judah asked a question, and it's 4 teams out here. We got to play a defense. Are you leaning towards the defense, or is that like something you could really care less about tonight?
It's really spread out. Like ownership spread out. The projections are all about the same. I don't feel strongly about any of the defenses. This is actually a weird slate because we've got 2 home underdogs, I think. Tampa Bay and Arizona, both underdogs. It's like I generally side with the home defense, but usually the home defense is projected to give up less points than the road defense, and that's not the case here. So honestly, I just don't feel strongly about the defenses. I'd maybe try not to have like too many players. I'm limited to like 2 or 3 players on offense against my own defense. I'd lean towards not using the quarterback against the opposing defense, but I don't feel super strongly. It's going to be pretty random tonight.
Okay, I hit the refresh on Labs, and we got an update here as of just 3 minutes ago, so we're good to go. We're good to go with this. I put our settings back in. Let's see what the lineups look like. There's a lot of ways you can use this, guys. Sometimes I like to come in here, run these lineups, and then just kind of pick out the ones that look good, that make me feel good. Sometimes I like to, take a whole batch and save like 10 or 20 of them at a time and all that good stuff. But let's see. Like the first one on the board is giving me Lamar with 2 pass catchers, a defense behind him, 2 Tampa pass catchers. What's your thoughts on that? Usually, I don't want to play like two pass catchers without the quarterback, but on a two-game slate, are you willing to drop all those kind of rules?
Yeah, absolutely. I think you almost have to, because I want multiple pieces from the same game. So like it looks odd having like Mike Evans and Kate Otten against like the Baltimore defense, but I think it kind of works. And
Man, yeah.
yeah, you got like Lamar, two wide receivers here. Tampa Bay gives up a ton of receiving yards, so I think this works.
Yeah, that first lineup is looking like a Tampa Baltimore stack, and then threw in like arguably the two best Charger players there from that other game as your little two-piece off right there. So that's good. What's the exposures come out on? There's a lot of JK, a lot of Lad McConkey popping up in here, sorted by a lot of Lamar Jackson. That's our overwhelming guy at quarterback, running back JK. Derrick Henry's getting a lot of love. James Conner, the three guys. Yeah, this is interesting builds that are popping up here. What is the tight ends look? It's a weird tight end night tonight. So there's not really any definitive. At one point in his career, you say Mark Andrews is an elite guy. He's not elite anymore. At least he's not putting up elite numbers. So that means that basically Kate Otten is a problem. Like Kate Otten, Trey McBride is good, but I don't know. I wouldn't call him elite just yet. How do you handle this? There's like no opportunity cost. You could almost punt this thing, take a 0, and it wouldn't kill you maybe if things worked out for you. What do you think about the tight end position?
Actually, I kind of like Trey McBride. So I'd written up Will Dissly. But like I think Dissly's going to see pretty high ownership. Like I think we had him projected at like the 15% range. I think it could end up being double that. Because he's that salary saver that's like cheaper than all the running backs and wide receivers. I think he's 2,800, and I think that's going to like draw some attention. Trey McBride's the only one that I feel like is going to project really well for a high score. And I think Kate Otten's going to be really popular. Like Trey McBride may actually see less ownership than we're expecting. I don't know. It's pretty wide open, right? Like, 'cause you've got the Baltimore guys, and then I don't mind going like way off the board, right? Like, it is possible that like Trey McBride has a decent game, doesn't pay off his price tag, and then you've got like Eric Tomlinson gets a touchdown or Charlie Kohler gets a touchdown. They're only 2,500. You save even more money off of Dissly. Like I like these 1% owned guys. Like the last Monday night doubleheader we had was AJ Barner won somebody $500,000 because he was 0.3% owned, no tight end did anything. Barner got the touchdown. He put up like 10 DraftKings points. That was enough. Got I guess like a 30-yard touchdown or something, maybe a touchdown and another reception. Like that was enough at minimum price on tight end if nobody else does anything.
I mean, that's how you win them outright. That's how you win them outright. Now you got to be prepared to lose a lot of money in the meantime until it actually hits that night. But Charlie Kohler, Eric Tomlinson, that's how you kind of win the money. We're speaking to tight ends now, and Derek has a question. And in DK on GPPs, would you rather go with Likely or Andrews as the tight end?
I'd probably go Mark Andrews because I don't think people are going to see like a ton of differentiation between them. But I think Andrews is still better. And I think if anything, like he's got this kind of reputation, like, oh, he's not doing anything this year, but he's actually been coming on a little bit. So, and historically, he's been so good. So, I'd almost go for like a reversion to the mean thing or something and go with Andrews, but it's pretty tight.
Yeah, a couple more questions real quick. There's a couple questions on specific stacking. Yeah, I mean, we kind of covered that a minute ago. Playing four players from the same team, absolutely tonight with the defense against the quarterback. I think I'm fairly cool with breaking like all the rules on a 2-gamer, not really worrying about your defense versus your other players. You just don't know how that's gonna like tonight. Like if you're playing a bunch of players from a game, you're kind of not worried about how many points the defense is giving up. On a main slate, I might look at sack rates and all this specific stuff to try to narrow it down on defenses. Tonight, you just kind of got to get lucky and hope somebody picks up a fumble or something. Otherwise, it's not really going to matter. So I'm good with like putting defenses in there against your offensive players and fully stacking. There was another, what's your opinion on a Baltimore super stack? You've already said you're cool with stacking the heck out of everybody. And somebody mentioned a Ravens-Bucks stack. Yep, we've talked about that. Pretty good now. Like, yeah, stack them all up, man, if you want to. So, yeah, can you play Dobbins and Vidal together? That's the common, like, I've asked you this a lot of times about two running backs from the same team. You typically don't like it, but what about Dobbins and Vidal tonight?
So I typically don't like it just because, like, when a running back gets injured, right, you're looking down, you're trying to find those lineups that have the backup. And then you don't want that lineup to have the starter. Having said that, Vidal is so cheap. I think he's the cheapest of the running backs that we expect to get pretty significant work. Like, I think he's the cheapest of the running backs you'd consider like an RB1 or RB2. So I don't know. Like, actually, I don't mind that tonight. And I definitely have some Dobbins and Vidal lineups together because, like, what if Dobbins has a fantastic game? Vidal gets another, 40-yard touchdown. Derrick Henry, puts up 80 yards, but no touchdown, no receptions. Like, he has those kinds of games sometimes where he gets, 10 or less DraftKings points. Bucky Irving and Rashad White, could easily bust. And then you just need James Conner to have kind of a bad game. And suddenly you want J.K. Dobbins. And then for that second running back spot, you just want to save as much money as possible while still getting a handful of points. That's how, like, Dobbins and Vidal get on the winning lineup together. And it's a pretty conceivable situation. So actually, I would not shy away from that tonight.
So we did this thing last year, and you said, and like a really small, like 2, maybe 3 games, I forget which it was, and you were like, man, I'm playing this backup running back and this backup running back, and you were all over it, and you ended up winning a lot of money that night and helping people win a lot of money, and because you hit it on the head. And tonight feels like this could be your night with the backup running back strategy, because look at what we got here. You have Dobbins, and now respectfully, I'm kind of waiting on the injury for him. He has been injury plagued his whole career. The game you predict, well, you don't predict it, but the game that you have Vidal and he goes down, you're going to crush with Vidal. We're looking at the other one. Derrick Henry's been all over, man, in these first 6 games or so. It's at some point there's going to be a game script that writes him out of this thing, and it's going to be a Justice Hill game. And then you've got a 3-headed monster in Tampa. The ownership's all spread out and not much, and just pick one. And the lowest owned guy, you don't know if the lowest owned guy could be the guy who goes crazy tonight. This feels like it's your kind of slate here with the bag of running back, Squirrel.
We literally just watched John Tucker win somebody $1 million at like less than 1% ownership. So yeah, and he's the one that we haven't been as high on. So yeah, I agree. It's a good backup running back slate. And actually, I wouldn't even overlook the Arizona guys because need to see if the Chargers and Cardinals and Axis have come out yet, because I think Trey Benson's a little bit dinged up to go pretty into the weeds of the backup running backs. But the Arizona backup then could be DeMarcado, who actually would be cheaper, I think, than Vidal. I'd have to look it up. But yeah, and like DeMarcado gets in there and catches passes as well. So yeah, it's a good backup running back slate. And honestly, like, I will say that slate last year was like Cleveland, and like Pittsburgh and New Orleans. It was a couple of games that were like 40-point totals or less. These ones are a little bit higher, so like I wouldn't necessarily overlook the 3K wide receivers either. Like I'd go, take a look at, I think it's like Semi Hoko and but I do want to make an effort to like try to make sure my lineups are utilizing these really cheap players, because you just need one touchdown. Like, you've got 4 wide receiver spots. Just takes a touchdown for somebody, at 3K to land on the winning line.
Yeah. I isolated some Kyler Murray stuff here. He's got upside. He hasn't shown it a whole lot this year. I felt like he's played some good quarterback, but he hasn't let his legs like carry him enough. When he does, it's going to be good. So I think he's a sneaky player. I isolated some lineups here, and they look pretty good. Some of these things look really solid with him in there, and you're probably getting a little leverage off of Lamar too, who's going to be the most popular quarterback. So that's one thing. Can you please, Jose Morales wants to know, can you please tell us your thoughts on Marvin Harrison Jr. tonight, who has been extremely hit or miss this year, mostly missed, but what's your thoughts on MHJ?
Yeah, he's not my favorite play, just because the Chargers have given up the fewest points in the NFL. The Chargers are favored. So I think of of the expensive wide receivers, he's probably my least favorite, but I think he's going to be everybody else's least favorite too. So I think, if I'm playing Kyler Murray, then he's definitely Harrison's definitely a guy I want to get into my lineup. I'm probably going to end up with more like Godwin, more Zay Flowers, more Mike Evans, even more Lad McConkey at his price than Marvin Harrison. And so Harrison is a player that could end up burning me.
Yeah. All right. Wade has a season-long question. So, Wade, you're in the playoffs. Okay, that's good. You already got your playoffs locked up. I'm guessing this is a trade. You could trade for Aaron Jones, but you'd have to give up Cooper Kupp or Amari Cooper or Marvin Harrison. Man, I don't know. I like all those guys. I would hold on to Cooper Kupp because if he comes back, he's awesome. I'd hang on to Amari Cooper because new team, new quarterback. He's going to be good. Marvin Harrison scares me a little bit rest of the season. He honestly does. And Aaron Jones is really good. I don't know, man. It'd be between Harrison for Jones, but I don't, you can't go wrong with any of that. I don't know. Likely or Andrews, we kind of answered that a minute ago. Rocket, kind of rewind about 10 minutes. We went into a spiel about that one. So we got about 2 minutes left. Man. So it's time. I'm going to turn the floor over to you. 2-game slate. Feel it in your plums. Play of the night tonight is who?
Zay Flowers. So Tampa Bay gives up second most receptions per game in the NFL. Baltimore's got the highest implied point total. I like pairing Zay Flowers with Lamar Jackson, but I don't mind. You can put Baker Mayfield in there, put one or both of the big Tampa Bay wide receivers, and then put Zay Flowers in as well. Like this could be a game where it could be a night where Zay Flowers gets a touchdown or two, gets a bunch of receptions, but Lamar Jackson doesn't really separate himself from Baker Mayfield, and so the guy that you need to have ends up being Zay Flowers. You want to pass on Tampa Bay instead of running, so yeah, going with Zay Flowers, feeling in the plums.
I'm going to give you my plums here in just a second, but real quick, Rocket Sauce does bring up a good point. We usually do give a good prop here. Do you have a good prop for tonight, a good player prop?
Let's see. I'm going to go like Sterling Shepard over 14 and a half receiving yards.
You mentioned you're filling in the plums is Zay. They target him a lot. You can get him for I think it's 4.5, maybe 5.5 receptions. You can go over that one. We've mentioned Derrick Henry and how you think it might not be a Henry game under those. I think it's 86.5 yards. I think is a really solid play too. There's a lot of ways you could go with this thing. And by the way, if you go like a 3-man, you go Henry under and Zay over, you're kind of getting a little bit of correlation there. If one's should take away from the other. So, yeah, I think any of those things are good. And so that's kind of where we're at there. And my plums play tonight is on the same wavelength as you. But now, mind you, this guy's not supposed to do very much. So take that, take it with a grain of salt. But it's Rashad Bateman. It's the same theory. Baltimore passing tonight. He's been getting a lot more involved this year, volume-wise, than he has in recent years. I'm going Rashad Bateman to just pay off that cheap price tag at a relatively low ownership. Yep, we feel the Flowers and Bateman in our plums. Squirrel, always a good show. Always fun to have a 2-gamer. We're going to be back again on Thursday night. It'll be NBA season by then, so we got some scheduling to work out. But for TJ behind the scenes, for Squirrel Patrol, I was your host, Chop. Good luck in those GPPs, and we're out of here.